Today I am putting every single Generation 2 Pokemon into a tier list based off of their overall ability. If you are interested in seeing more of these, please be sure to like the video and subscribe. I'll try to get more out as soon as possible. And if you agree or disagree with any of my decisions, please leave a comment. I'd love to have a discussion. Let's go ahead and get started though. Let's start with Chikorita and what I think is probably the worst of the Johto starters. As a matter of fact, Chikorita is going to start in the C tier. I think Bayleaf is a better version of Chikorita, but it's not really all that great otherwise. And Meganium definitely bumps up to a B tier. It's not very powerful. It was built to be bulky, which does work from a competitive standpoint, but any kid who played the Johto games when they came out was really disappointed in this because all they wanted was power, and they didn't get that. Cyndaquil, on the other hand, is probably the best of the three starters. People can flop back and forth between Cyndaquil and Totodile, but I think Cyndaquil is really, really good. Quilava is definitely a better version of Cyndaquil, and Typhlosion is one of the best Pokemon in Johto. From a region that's pretty weak, I think by all means Typhlosion is an S tier Pokemon. It is that good. It is phenomenal. Totodile is definitely not as good as Cyndaquil. I probably don't even say it as good as Bayleaf. It probably goes about right there. But Croconaw is definitely better than Bayleaf, and Feraligatr is an A tier Pokemon in my personal opinion. I think when you consider the three starters, I think for sure Meganium's the worst. I think Feraligatr is a solid Pokemon, but Typhlosion is just so good. I couldn't put Feraligatr in S. It's got to go to A. Now let's go through a whole line of stinkers. Sentret is awful. Furret is slightly better. Still awful. I would probably put Furret about right there. Actually, I think right here, I think Bayleaf is a better Pokemon than Furret. I would actually take all those Pokemon over it. Hoot, absolute garbage. Is it better than Sentret? Yes. Should it have been a Dark type? Yes. Does it have Hypnosis, which gives it a little bit of utility? Yes, that's all good. Noctowl is slightly better, but I would not put Noctowl above any of these second form starters. I think Noctowl belongs right there. Alright, let's just get these out of the way. What did you expect? Did you expect anything different? Lediba and Ledian are the most disappointing Pokemon ever created. I kind of like them, but this is a time where Bug was bad. Spinarak and Ariados are slightly better. They get access to Nightshade. They get access to a couple other things, but I wouldn't put them any higher than this. Our first evolution that they added in Generation 2, Crobat. The fastest Pokemon in the game. He gets poison moves. He gets much better moves. He gets a good ability. I really like Crobat. I think Crobat is an A tier Pokemon. I think there are a lot of really good things you can do with Crobat. I love it very much. Chinchou and Lantern. These are kind of controversial Pokemon because their typing is so unique, and Lantern is actually very bulky. The problem is they just have no offensive power, and their movesets are just absolutely terrible, especially in Generation 2. Chinchou is definitely a C tier Pokemon. I would take it over Totodile, but I probably wouldn't put it anywhere else. And Lantern I'm going to put at the highest of the C tier. I think that's a fair estimation. Now getting into the baby Pokemon, which are going to be very hard to rank, mainly because of the fact that I'm comparing its current power and not really what it becomes. But I think out of all the babies, Pichu is probably the best because Pichu still gets good moves. It's still pretty powerful, all things considered. And it even got got put in Super Smash Bros. So that's enough for me to be like, you know what, people really like this thing. But also it's just overall power is much better than what people expect. I think I would probably take Pichu and put it above Chinchou, but it can't be better than anything past it. Cleffa is absolutely terrible. It does have access to Metronome, which makes it unique, and I would probably put it over Lediba, but I think the comparison ends there. Igglybuff, on the other hand, is a little bit bulky in regards to health, but that's really all it has for it. And I would say that it's probably worse than Cleffa. I'd put it right there. Togepi is an interesting Pokemon. It does evolve into a pretty solid Pokemon, but by itself, it's really bad. And I would actually say it's probably better than Igglybuff, but it's not better than Cleffa. Togetic, on the other hand, I'm going to move over to B tier. I think Togetic is a solid Pokemon, and with current day Fairy typing, it's even better. Xatu and Natu, very unique typings again, Psychic and Flying. The problem is all flying moves were physical back in Generation 2, which really hurt it. But if we talk about modern day Xatu and Natu, I think there's definitely something here for it. I think Natu is definitely a little bit better than Hoot, if I had to guess myself. Xatu, on the other hand, I think isn't even better than Noctowl. It's not really that good, in my personal opinion. Now we're getting into some really good Pokemon. Mareep, Fluffy, and Ampharos are all very good Pokemon. All three of them are some of the best electric types, if not the best electric types in all of Generation 2, not counting Raikou. And I really, really, really like Mareep. I think, out of all the electric types on this list, it has to be better than all of them. Flaffy, on the other hand, is just a much better version of all of them, and I would actually take Flaffy and put Flaffy right here. I think Flaffy does so many good things for you, on top of being a little bit bulky, and Ampharos is definitely an A-tier Pokemon. Ampharos is a phenomenal Pokemon. It is really, really, really good. Then you took Ampharos and you said, let's give it Dragon typing. And I was like, all right, I'm in. No problem. Makes no sense, by the way, but I'm okay with it. I'm in on this. I will buy all the Ampharos stock. The Mega Ampharos stock is there. S-tier Pokemon. Bellossom. Why you even decided to put Bellossom into the game is what disappoints me. It is absolutely terrible. Bellossom is probably going to go right here. No, right there. Two of my favorites, Marill and Azumarill. Bulky water types that gain fairy typing later in the game. But if we don't even talk about modern day fairy typing, these things were so bulky but got so many good moves. I really, really liked using them. Not to mention they had the ability to get huge power when abilities were introduced into the game. I really like both of these Pokemon. Personally, I would take Marill and I'd put Marill right here. But Azumarill is a B-tier Pokemon. Azumarill is a pretty good Pokemon. I really, really enjoy using it. Sudowoodo. If we're talking about how iconic this Pokemon is, we definitely can consider this to be A to S tier Pokemon. But if we're talking about this Pokemon's overall ability, it's got to be C tier, but I actually think out of everything in C tier, it's probably the strongest one yet. Politoed is another one I actually really like and I think is really underrated. People tend to forget Politoed's a Pokemon because everybody goes after Poliwrath nowadays, but back in the day, Politoed was the one because Poliwrath was a physical water type, whereas Politoed was a special water type. So a lot of people went into the Politoed route instead, and it was a very good decision. I think Politoed for sure is a B tier Pokemon, but I would say that Azumarill is definitely better than it, and I'd probably put Togetic worse than it as well. I think Politoed deserves to be right there. Here are three really bad Pokemon that are redeemed by their speed. Hoppip is absolutely terrible. It gets no offensive moves until level 15, and I would actually say other than Ledyba, it's probably right there. On the other hand, Skiploom is a slightly better version. It's definitely better than Ledian. And Jumpluff, because of how fast it is actually pretty valuable, but still not much of anything else. I think it goes right there. Where do I want to put Aipom here? This is getting tricky. I'm definitely getting into some of the harder ones now. Aipom is a bad Pokemon. Okay? It was redeemed with Ambipom. But is it better than Furret? Yes. Is it better than Marill? I don't think so. I think I'd put it over Furret, but I don't know if I'd take it over the rest of these. The Pokemon with the lowest base stat total in the game is Sunkern. However, Ledyba plus Baby Pokemon plus Hoppip are all actually worse because the difference with Sunkern is that it gets access to better moves. There's a video on my channel from back in the day where I swept a gym with a Sunkern and a Nuzlocke. And ever since then, I've liked this Pokemon and appreciated it a lot more. So, I personally think Sunkern belongs in the C tier, but not at the lowest. I personally think Sunkern probably belongs about right here. I think it deserves a little bit better than its stats say. Now, Sunflora is really just a slightly better version, and I would put Sunflora there. Yanma. Fast Pokemon, gets access to Speed Boost, but it didn't have an evolution yet. This was basically Ninjask before Ninjask could thrive. This is what inspired Ninjask to exist. The problem was this is Generation 2 and bug types just weren't a thing. They weren't good. They were just kind of there. And while it is better than other bugs on the list, I can't say it's perfect. And I think Yanma goes right there. Wooper and Quagsire. Wooper is actually an underrated Pokemon. I think it's underappreciated. I still think Marill is a better Pokemon. I think Bayleaf is a better Pokemon. I think Wooper belongs right there. I think Quagsire is a solid B tier Pokemon though. I think Quagsire can do a lot of very good things when you don't expect. Espeon and Umbreon. These are two evolutions that have opposite purposes. One's a special attacker and one's a defender. Umbreon has one of the coolest designs. It is so useful defensively. It is so strong. It is an A tier Pokemon. Espeon, I'm going to put in the high B tier. I think the offensive power doesn't make up for the defensive power that Umbreon gets. Murkrow is terrible. Murkrow is a Pokemon that they noticed immediately in Gen 4 needed an evolution, and they gave it to him. This is basically everything Noctowl could be, but not quite Noctowl. Noctowl is definitely better than Murkrow. Slowking. Let me tell you guys something. I love Slowking. This guy is a monster. He can do so many good things for you. He has such a unique typing. The only thing this guy is really missing is speed. If this thing had speed, he would be absolutely unstoppable. But if you can bring Trick Room or something on him, he's unbeatable. He has great typing. He has great offensive power. He gets good abilities. He gets good moves. This is a very good Pokemon. This is an A tier Pokemon as well. Misdreavus. Missed out on an evolution as well, unfortunately. And because of that, I think Misdreavus goes right there. Unknown is one of the worst Pokemon in the game, but you can still make him more useful than baby Pokemon. I'd probably put him right there. Wobbuffet. Wobbuffet has the ability to be an S tier Pokemon if you play him properly. I'm not even joking. If you play Wobbuffet properly, he is an S tier Pokemon. But if you don't, he is one of the worst Pokemon in the game. The middle between S and C is a low B, and that's where Wobbuffet goes. Girafarig. Another fun Pokemon to use. I think it gets good moves, but it just doesn't really work for what you wanted, for what you want for it. What you need it for, I should say. It doesn't really equate to that. So as much as I like Girafarig, I do think that it's not a good Pokemon. And I would actually say that Zapchu's a better Psychic type, but it is better than Aipom for sure, especially even if it's just a normal type. Pineco and Forretress. Forretress is an A tier Pokemon. It is everything you want in a wall. Every single thing that you want in a wall, you get out of Forretress. Forretress can lay down spikes, he can lay down toxic spikes, he can use Protect, he can use Stealth Rocks, he can use all of it. Not to mention he can also get Toxic, he can get all kinds of different things. I think Forretress is really underrated. It gets Rapid Spin as well. It's one of the best walls in the game. It does so many good things for you. Pineco, on the other hand, is just Pineco, and it really doesn't do anything for you at all. And as a matter of fact, I'd put it better than the babies, but that's as good as I would put it. Dunsparce. The wasted potential of Dunsparce has always baffled me. Dunsparce is a Pokemon that can do a lot of interesting things for you because it gets really, really cool moves. And its design is not all that bad. When you encountered this when you were a kid in the cave before the first town, right? You go in that cave, you find a Dunsparce, you think, this is so cool, this will evolve into something awesome. And then 50 levels later, it still doesn't evolve, and you're like, what is going on? And you're going in your player's guide, your Pokemon Crystal player's guide, and you're like, where is it? I don't know. Why is there no evolution for this? And then you see that Dunsparce doesn't evolve. And you wonder to yourself, why? Pokemon Scarlet and Violet comes out, and you see Dunsparce, and you're like, why is Dunsparce in Generation 9? And you don't catch it, of course, because it's a Dunsparce, and you move on, or maybe you catch it just to fill your Pokedex. And then you go into Area 0, and you see Dunsparces running around. A Dunsparce with 2 tails running around. And you're like, is that a Dunsparce? You encounter it, and it says Dunsparce. And then you look at Dunsparce's stats, and you see, okay, well, you know what? Nintendo had some fun. They knew nobody liked Dunsparce because they never gave it an evolution, so they basically just made it 2 Dunsparces. And then you go and you look, and you see its stats, and you see it's still terrible. It's a sad, sad disappointment. Dunsparce had so much potential and never lived up to it. I think he goes right there. Let's talk about another underrated Pokemon. Let's talk about Gligar. I really like Gligar. I think Gligar, even though it doesn't have an evolution yet, is so underrated. I think it does so many good things for you in so many different ways. Gligar is a B tier Pokemon. I just said it. I just said it. Steelix. Everything we wanted from Onix that we didn't get, we thought we were going to get in Steelix. They changed the typing. They made it Steel and Ground. The thing is that even though they changed the typing, they didn't add the extra defenses that Steelix really needed to thrive. And because of that, Steelix was just bad. It wasn't good. It's probably, at best case scenario, a high C tier. Adding the Steel typing and getting rid of the Rock typing was good, don't get me wrong. And it did redeem Onix in some different ways because we loved Onix. We wanted Onix to be cool, but we just couldn't do it. But then, it just still is weak. It can still get one-shot by close combat by any special water move. I mean, it is terrible. And that's why Steelix is a C tier Pokemon. Mega Steelix is only slightly better. I've never fought against a Mega Steelix and felt threatened. I think Mega Steelix is very weak. Snubbull and Granbull. Let's talk underappreciated Pokemon, because these two are the ones. These two are very underrated. I think Snubbull and Granbull are very good Pokemon. I think they're perfect for the generation that they're in. And I would personally put Granbull all the way up at an A tier. I think Granbull is so powerful if used properly. I know Dark, unfortunately, was a special type back in the day, so stuff like Crunch didn't do a lot for you, but every normal type move that you got did. Because Granbull wasn't a Dark type, it just got a lot of Dark types. Let me clear that up before you guys are in the comments saying otherwise. But, like, I personally think that Granbull is very, very, very good. Quillfish. I don't need to say anything. You guys know what Quillfish is. You guys know how disappointing he is. He's going right here. Scizor. Scyther was already one of the best Pokemon in Generation 1. And they decided that they were going to give Scizor a Scyther in evolution into Scizor. From a design circumstance, or standpoint I should say, doesn't look as cool. But from a battle standpoint, this guy is him. He is absolutely him. He's an A tier Pokemon. Scizor is great. Mega Scizor is the top of the A tiers. Absolutely. Phenomenal Pokemon. Shuckle. Everything that Forretress is, Shuckle tries to be every single day. But unfortunately, he misses out by just a little bit. But he's still a B tier Pokemon because he's a great wall. Let's talk about everybody's favorite Generation 2 Pokemon. And if this isn't your favorite Generation 2 Pokemon, I don't know who you are. Heracross is good. Heracross is an S tier Pokemon. There is no question about it. Heracross is the first bug type in the game that people thought was OP. He is so good in every way, shape, or form. And Mega Heracross, when you took one of the best Pokemon in the game, you threw him into Generation 6 where bug typing is so much better and abilities are included, right? And then you give him a Mega Evolution. And what did you give him in that Mega Evolution? You gave him Skill Link. As terrible as his design looks, you gave him Skill Link. And as soon as you did that, you made Mega Heracross the greatest of all time in all of the Johto region. It is the greatest Johto Pokemon, period. Nothing stands in its way. Mega Heracross is him. No question. Sneasel. I am using a Sneasel right now in my Pokemon Black randomizer. And Sneasel is not a bad Pokemon, but it has no defenses, which is really what holds it back. I think it's definitely a C tier Pokemon, but I think it probably belongs about right there. It just has too many weaknesses to be useful, and it's not quite fast enough to be a sweeper. Teddiursa and Ursaring. I think Teddiursa is about the same as any other first form normal in this game. Probably better than Aipom, and maybe better than Snubbull. I think I'd take Snubbull. I think I'd put Teddiursa right there. But Ursaring is an A tier Pokemon. It's one of the best normal types in the game. It's basically offensive Snorlax. That's the way I kind of describe it. It's still bulky, but it just has so much offense that it can do so many good things for you. Slugma and Macargo. Slugma is a fire type that gets pretty good moves. And I actually really like that about Slugma, is that its moveset is pretty solid. The main problem with it is its typing when it evolves more than anything else. Slugma I actually would take over a Cyndaquil. I think it's better than Cyndaquil. But Magcargo, if it didn't gain that rock typing, which added so many more weaknesses, in exchange for hardly being better than Slugma, it would be a lot better. But instead, it's only going to go right there. Swinub and Piloswine are interesting ones. These are our first ice types of the generation, other than Sneasel actually. We had Sneasel as well. And they are better ice types than Sneasel in my opinion, but Swinub definitely not. Swinub does have access to some interesting ground moves pretty early on though, which actually makes it pretty valuable in your run. But right there is probably where it belongs. On the other side, Piloswine is definitely a B tier Pokemon. Could be much better, that's why they gave it Mamoswine later, because it was lacking some offensive power, but it definitely still got the job done. Corsola. Corsola is a disappointment. Corsola needed an evolution. It finally got one in some spin-off game, and that's it. Unfortunately, Corsola is still Corsola. And it's honestly going to belong in the C tier. And I would actually say that Lantern is better than it, but it's probably going to go right there. Let's talk about Remoraid. Remoraid is probably one of the worst water types in the game and belongs all the way back here. Octillery is better. Octillery is not perfect, but Octillery is better. And I think he's probably the best water type in C tier. Delibird. Merry Christmas to everyone. Delibird is fun. He was designed and put in the game to be fun. He was not designed and put in the game to be used. I think the concept of Delibird is funny. It's unique. And it brings people joy. And it just makes the game fun. This is not something Pokemon does as often as they used to. But is it a good Pokemon? Of course not. It's practically useless. But is it the worst? I'm going to put it right there. Mantine. Mantine is underrated. It's underrated. Its typing sucks. And if it didn't have this typing, it would be better. But I think it's bulky. I think it also can be strong. I think it gets a good ability. I think it learns good moves. I think Mantine is a solid B tier Pokemon. Here's one of my favorite Pokemon in the generation. Skarmory is one of the most underrated walls in the game. He can do so many good things for you when you least expect him to. Skarmory is that dude. He is so good. And he is an S tier Pokemon. He's the best wall in Generation 2. Houndour and Houndoom. This is very good typing. Dark and Fire, when Dark was a special type back in Generation 2, was massive. Fire already being an overpowered type, but an even better one in Generation 2 because of all the gyms that Fire's good against. And you give it Dark typing as well, a lot of good things happened. Houndour is definitely better than Quilava, and Houndoom is an A tier Pokemon. I think Houndoom is solid. I think it does everything you need it to. Mega Houndoom, however, just going to go to the top of the A tier. He's not going to be any further than that. I think he belongs right there. Kingdra redeemed the Seadra line of Pokemon. Kingdra gave a water type, dragon typing, and made it bulkier. And water and dragon has so many unique resistances because it no longer is weak to grass anymore and adds just a dragon type weakness in exchange, which isn't even that common anyway. It made it really, really, really good. I think it deletes the electric type weakness as well. It does. So that makes a really big difference defensively. And offensively, it can learn things like Outrage and other really, really strong dragon type moves. I have no complaints. I think Kingdra is really, really good. And it's going to be an A tier Pokemon. And I think it belongs about right there. Phanpy and Donphan. I think Phanpy gets really good moves, but it just doesn't have the power quite yet that Donphan gives you. It is a faster Pokemon than most ground types are, but not much more than that. I think Phanpy goes right here. Donphan, on the other hand, is better. It's much better, and it is probably the best ground type in C tier, but I can't put it any higher than that. Porygon 2. I think Porygon 2 is cool. I think it's underrated, but it just isn't quite the power that Porygon Z is just yet. And it is a low B tier Pokemon. Let's go through some of these pretty quickly. Stantler is absolutely terrible. It's really disappointing, and it goes right there. Smeargle, if used properly, can be an A tier Pokemon. I think it belongs in B, though. Probably about right there. I think it really depends on the abilities that you sketch. But in Generation 2, you don't have a whole lot of options in order to sketch the right abilities to make Smeargle a monster. So you kind of got to do what you got to do. Tyrogue's the worst baby Pokemon in the game. It's going to go right there. Well, it does get some fighting moves. Maybe we put it like here. I underestimated it. I love Hitmontop, but Hitmontop is the weakest of the 3 Hitmon Pokemon. Lee and Chan are much better than Hitmontop is. I think Hitmontop probably belongs in B tier, but it's going to be probably at the end. I think that's the best place for it. I do think it gets really good moves as well, and it's a really, really nice design. It's just not as useful as people want it to be. Smoochum. Smoochum gets, again, pretty decent moves. Matter of fact, all 3 of these baby Pokemon I'm looking at right now are the 3 best baby Pokemon in the game. No question about it. And I think Smoochum most certainly belongs at the top of the baby tier. And better than Pineco, I think. Elekid, however, in my opinion, is the GOAT of all the baby Pokemon. I think Elekid is a very good baby Pokemon. I think Elekid belongs all the way up here. Magby, slightly worse. Miltank. Now, if we're talking about the Miltank that you encounter in Gold, Silver, and Crystal at the 3rd gym, you can put this as the greatest Pokemon in the game. But Miltank by itself, once it gets to a high enough level, isn't really all that great. And honestly, if it weren't for the Milk Drink ability, people wouldn't even have it on its team. I think Miltank is a B tier Pokemon. I don't think it goes any higher than that. We're getting some really good Pokemon now. Blissey. The 3rd best wall in the game, behind Forretress, behind Skarmory, is Blissey. If you play it right, and you make sure that you're in against Pokemon that are special attackers, Blissey will not die with Soft Boiled as an ability, with setup abilities, with Seismic Toss, Body Slam, whatever you choose to bring. It does work. Blissey is an excellent Pokemon. We got 3 S tiers coming up. It's just a matter of whether or not the order is proper. And I'm going to start with what I think is the best of the 3. And in my personal opinion, it is Raikou. The speed plus one of the best offensive types plus the moves that it gets. Second best in my opinion is Entei. I think Entei is incredible. I think Entei gets really, really strong moves. It gets Sacred Fire, which is one of the most underrated moves in the game. And it's also, stats-wise, is really, really good. And another S tier, but the worst of the 3, in my opinion, is Suicune. Larvitar, Pupitar, and Tyranitar. Because of Larvitar and Pupitar's typing, it doesn't do a whole lot of work, in my opinion. I would actually take both of them over Sneasel, but I think that's where the comparison stops. I think maybe we go this way. That probably looks a little bit better. Tyranitar, of course, is an S tier Pokemon. You guys knew it was coming. Tyranitar is a good Pokemon. It is a very, very good Pokemon, but there are better things that it could be. Mega T-Tar, on the other hand, is phenomenal, and it's going to go right there. I think Mega T-Tar is just, you take everything Tyranitar does, and you make it so much better. All right, guys, let's talk about a controversial opinion. I think Lugia is an overrated legendary Pokemon. I think its moveset sucks. I think its typing sucks. I think its stats suck. I think it is an A-tier legendary Pokemon. I just do. I just do. Ho-Oh, in my opinion, is the top of the S tier, however. Ho-Oh is a monster. He does work. He makes sure that things get done. He will take out anyone. Great abilities, great moves, great stats, great typing. I love Ho-Oh. Fire, Flying, the first ever. Well, actually, Charizard. Okay, it's better than Charizard then. It's a better version of Charizard. It's phenomenal. And Celebi is another S tier, but it really doesn't belong too high up. I think Celebi's going to go right there. So this is our list. Heracross is the GOAT. All the C tiers, all the S tiers, A, B, C. Let me know if you guys agree or disagree with my opinions. Let me know if you guys enjoyed the video. I would love to do a Generation 3 tier list as well. As the generations go on, less and less Pokemon are introduced, so these do go a little bit faster, which is good. So if you guys enjoyed it, please give the video a like, leave me a comment, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Have a good one.